September 12, 1952. Braxton County, West Virginia. Fisher Farm, up past Flatwoods. Air thick, thunder rolling low. 6 of us out there. Army relay test, nothing special. Jeep idling, radio steady. Then the night changed. Smelled like metal and bad air. Birds went dead quiet. Compass drifted. A red glow dropped behind the ridge. Slow, wrong, alive somehow. We went to check it out. Should have never gone down that hill. So before we continue, please make sure to like and subscribe to support the channel and comment down below where you're watching from. Thanks. I was young then, 21. Corporal, medic in training. Folks called me lucky. That was a joke. I wasn't lucky. I was stubborn and too dumb to scare easily. This was West Virginia, Braxton County, early fall of 1952. The air still held summer. Sweat stuck to the back of my neck. Grass wet from a day of heat. Crickets working hard. Distant thunder rolled somewhere behind the ridges, low and lazy. We were up on a swell of pasture above Flatwoods. Fisher Farm. You could see the town roofs if you squinted through the haze. We were a small detachment, 6 of us on a relay test. Nothing fancy. A light-duty thing for the guard. We hauled up a radio and a field phone line. A Jeep with a canvas top and a 3/4-ton truck idled below in the shade. Generator thumping along in a steady beat. Salt streaks on tan shirts. Rifle slings creaking when we shifted. The ground smelled like cut hay and damp dirt. Lieutenant Daniel Hargrove ran us. He was about 25. Calm. Radio man by trade. Came home from Korea with straight lines in his head. He wore his map in a waterproof sleeve and never raised his voice. He kept a notebook tucked under his left elbow and wrote down weather, wind, and signal strength. Every so often he'd stop and call something in, then stand with his chin up while the static ran. He had that look, studied, careful. He could have been a school teacher if he didn't have that far stare from bad hills on another continent. Sergeant Irene Kincaid Wren kept us honest. 28, hard NCO edges but fair. She kept the chow dry, the cables neat, and the talk in check. She laughed at our griping, then had us move the truck 10 feet for better footing. She carried a clipboard and a pistol and didn't fuss with either unless she had to. CPL. Max Hummel was the old one for us, about 30. War had rubbed him down to the grain. He'd seen too much in Korea. He didn't believe in spook tales, and he didn't trust new things. He cleaned his M1 like prayer. He called saucers junk for city papers, PVT. Julio Ortiz was the sharp-eyed kid, 19, ears like a fox. He grew up not far across the state line, in hills that felt the same. He could tell a truck from 2 ridges away by sound alone. He liked to sit still and listen until you forgot he was there. PBT. Tom Whitaker was the tinkerer, 23. If it had wires and a panel, he pulled it apart and made it better, or he stared at it until it worked. He said very little unless it was about voltages or a wire tracing. He always smelled faintly of solder smoke, even out here. Then there was me, Lucky Delaney. I kept the A-bag squared away and washed for rashes and bad water. I wasn't much for theory. I watched people's hands and eyes. You could tell when a man was going to break his fingers. You could tell when a storm was going to hit by the way dogs leaned on their paws. We hiked the high pasture to a rise under locust trees. Dew clung to our boots even though the day had been hot. The ground dropped off into old logging roads. You could see the lines cut by men and mule years back. Fern and blackberry grew thick where the cuts softened. We strung a line to a field phone post we'd lashed to a fence. Whitaker set the GRC rig on a crate and hooked the handwheel to the little generator. He liked the hum of it. The Jeep sat with the brakes set and the nose pointed at the slope, just in case. The truck idled now and then to keep the battery up. The canvas top clacked in a light breeze. When the breeze died, you could feel the air settle heavy on your skin. We talked small, football, pay, the rising drum of the Cold War. Newspapers that summer ran on saucers and lights and this and that. Folks in D.C. pointed up at the sky and guessed. Hummel rolled his eyes and said it was all bad navigation and whiskey. The Sovs can barely keep the thing in the air, he said. If you see a saucer, it's some colonel's boondoggle with a tarp over it. A local farmer came by near sundown. Earl Bailey. He moved slow from a long day, tall, with shoulders like fence posts and a cap folded soft with sweat. He rested his palms on the top rung and peered in at us through the wire. Said his place ran a few pastures over. He said he saw odd lights the last 2 nights, far off, red on the horizon where no road ran. He wasn't trying to start a story. He just didn't want his fields burned. "You Army folks keep an eye up there," he said. He jerked his chin toward Fisher Farm's higher slope. Had a glow up there last night around sundown. Dogs carried on something fierce. A brown dog showed up after he left, skinny mutt, collar with a broken leather loop. He answered to Richie when Ortiz clicked his tongue. He hung around and watched us eat. He was too polite to beg, but he didn't leave. The sun slid. Clouds moved in from the west and sat low, a dark ceiling over bright grass. The ridges laid out against the sky, one behind the other, all the way to wherever thunder lived. Fireflies kicked up down in the dips where air pooled. The air smelled sweet, then turned a bit sour, then clean again, a storm somewhere. Lightning flickered a long way off. Not a full strike, just a smear of light from behind the clouds. No one expected anything but a long evening of checks. Hargrove logged our baseline and the noise level. He read it out in that flat way. He looked content, a simple job. Make the call, note the signal, move the Jeep 5 yards and do it again. He used a grease pencil to mark the hours and the line strength. He said the ground here carried well, dense clay, the kind that grabs your boot heel and asks for more. Nothing felt strange yet. It was just another hill, another line, another night on duty. The kind where you tell jokes and then shut up when the radio squawks. The kind you forget later. Except we didn't. We started picking up odd noise on the radio. Not the usual hiss. A bloom that rose and fell in a curve. It came regular. Every 11 minutes. Whitaker timed it off his wristwatch and tapped the side of the set when it came on. He hated Unexplained hum. He said he liked his ghosts on paper, in schematics. The compass drifted a few degrees near the tree line, not much. Just enough to make Hargrove check it twice and then pull back into the open. Near a patch of earth that looked darker, the needle hung an instant on a false north. The ground there looked older and burned, not fresh. A ring faded into the grass. Kincaid crouched and rubbed the dirt between her fingers. "Could be lightning strike, weeks old," she said. "We've had storms." Ortiz paused on the fence line and tilted his head. He said he heard a hum low in the chest, not the generator, not the truck, not a road. It rolled through the ground and died when he stepped back from the tree line. He nodded, then kept that spot in his memory the rest of the evening. He did that. He made maps in his head and carried them around. Toward dusk, some kids jogged up from the road, lanky, breathless, with baseball caps and dirt on their shins. One boy said they saw a red light fall behind Fisher Farm. He said it pulsed and dipped and the tail went dark, then bright, then dark again. He wanted to know if we were chasing the saucer. Hummel told him to go home and finish homework. The kid grinned, said there wasn't school till Monday, then ran with his friends back to town. Their laughter trailed off. It didn't carry far. The air felt thick. The wind shifted. A metallic smell came up the slope. Then a tang of sulfur. My molars hurt a little when I breathed in deep. The crickets shut up all at once, then a burst of wings. Birds blew out of the locusts and headed south in a messy wave. Feathers drifted down and stuck to wet grass. Richie tucked his tail for a second, then shook it off and sat at Ortiz's heel. The dog wasn't brave. He was loyal to whoever fed him last. Kincaid kept it sober. She said a rotten log could stink of sulfur. She said lightning can cook the ground and leave odd mineral stink. She wrote it down and didn't guess. Hargrove kept to the book. He called the relay station and noted the static. He used words that made him look bored. Noise on the band. Intermittent bloom. 11-minute cycle. He didn't jump to saucers, he stuck to facts. Hummel mumbled about owls and gossip. Said a night bird could make a grown man hear a ghost if the man was primed by the papers. He rolled his shoulder until it popped and spat into the grass. The sky blinked red behind the far ridge. Not lightning. A dull streak for half a breath. Then gone. The Jeep's dash light dimmed, came back. We all saw it, then pretended we didn't. I can still feel that shift. Not fear. Not yet. Just the sense that something had entered the room and stood behind you. You didn't turn because you knew it would be gone if you looked. You know when a meteor cuts across, it moves quick. Straighter than you think. It burns hard, then out. This wasn't that. This thing came slow enough for a breath and another. Red-orange, pulp orange, then deeper red. It cut a gentle arc and pulsed. Brighter, dim, brighter. It dropped toward the Fisher pasture near a stand of white oak and brush. No sound carried. Not then. We watched it go behind the tree line. The glow hung a second, then sank lower. Then nothing but a faint rinse over the clouds. Hargrove keyed the radio and spoke into the handpiece. His voice stayed even. He gave our position by reference to town and road and pasture. He said we observed a red light in controlled descent. He requested guidance. The reply broke up, then rose, then broke again. A carrier wave sat on the channel and chewed his words. We caught half a sentence back. Hold, observe, stay, then hash. Protocol said we didn't rush a thing we didn't know. We were to watch from a distance, unless folks were at risk. Earl's place sat closer than town. The Fisher pasture ran behind his top fence. The glow had dropped near his high ground. That put it in the area of where his kids would go to hunt rabbits if they had a free hour. Hargrove weighed that and made the call. Observe forward, he said. No fire. No hero moves. Keep the radio hot. He signed it out like a work order. We moved in a spread. Ortiz and Hummel went ahead on the left, with a fence bulged out around a thicket. Kincaid took me on the Jeep right up to the first break in the fence for a gate. Whitaker stayed with the radio set on the crate near the truck and fed the generator. He tucked the handset under his chin and unrolled a little more line. The Jeep motor stayed on a low idle. The three-quarter growled down in the dip. The light faded to a thick dusk. Everything edged into silhouette. The dog trotted 10 paces ahead, hackles up. He set his paws with care. He growled, then shut up and watched. We reached the pasture. The grass near the top drained into a dip. A green fog sat in the low. It didn't drift with the breeze. It clung and rippled when you breathed near it. The air above it shimmered with heat, a mirage look, though the ground was damp. A dark shape squatted behind brush. It had weight. My brain tried to call it a stump. It wasn't a stump. It had curves. A stump doesn't carry. Pear-shaped in the low. Half hidden by wild growth. Nothing burned. But the grass near it had a cooked look. Wilted, not char. The smell cut deep. Metal and pennies and a hit of sulfur. Ozone, the way a weld shop smells when someone's been sloppy. A thin hiss threaded through. Not a leak from our truck. Not a snake. Steady. The kind you hear when someone cracks a valve a touch. It rose and dropped. Cycled. Richie whined and backed up until he could press his hip to Ortiz's boot. That dog wanted out, but also wanted a person between him and it. My eyes watered. I blinked and tasted copper. My tongue felt wrong. Hummel's hands trembled. He swore and shook them out. It's a setup, he said. A rig. A goddamn test balloon or some new toy. He sounded like he wanted that to be true more than he believed it. The Jeep coughed. The idol dipped on its own, came back. No one touched anything. The dash lights fluttered again. I put a hand on the hood and felt a buzz in the steel that didn't match the motor. We didn't rush the low round. We ghosted along the fence line and looked from behind posts and brush. No wind. The thunder on the horizon took a breath and moved further out. Somewhere behind us, Whitaker's voice came through the handset on Kincaid's belt line. We lay up, getting roll and noise floor, logging. His voice sounded too casual. That's how you know a man is working. He keeps it flat so his hands don't jump. We stood and watched that shape. Every muscle said not to go closer. Radio started going strange, not dead. Worse, Whitaker reported clean words from our own past calls coming back low, almost under the noise. Not delayed by long. A few heartbeats. He said he heard our voices in that crooked echo, Hargrove's readouts. Kincaid's earlier check on a chord, his own 1-2-3 test. Replayed. A mirror that forgot to keep up. We shifted another 10 yards down the fence and found a break in the brush. The white oak stood there, big, with a rough bark that had taken lightning in some old year and healed around it. Ortiz froze with his mouth a line. He lifted his hand. He didn't point. He didn't need to. I saw it. On the far edge near the oak, hovering above the grass. 10 feet up, maybe 12. Hard to be sure in the haze. A shape with a hood that came to a point. A spade-shaped crown over a rounder base. No legs. No feet on the ground. Arms that hung wrong. Not human. Too regular at the ends. Joints that said machine. The claws didn't curl like a hand. They held 2 notches and a pivot. Clean, not grown. 2 red columns where eyes might go on a face. They weren't eyes. They were beams that switched on and cut a slow sweep. They tracked dust in the air and made fog glow. The beams moved too deliberate. They paused on fence wire and lifted off it. They rested at the tops of boots and lifted. We weren't ready for that. We froze. The whole field felt underwater. My jaw clenched so hard my ears rang. Kincaid kept her voice even. Back to cover. No sudden moves. She guided us behind the posts. Hands up, no one fired. Hargrove whispered, no fire unless direct threat. His voice didn't shake. His hand tightened on the butt of the handset until the knuckles paled. Hummel flicked off his safety. I heard the click. He told us again it was a rig, a prototype. American or Soviet, he didn't care which, as long as it was human. You can fight human. You can hate human. You can put a name on human and rest. The thing's head rotated, smooth. I heard a small whine, not loud. Clean, like a small gear train under grease. It held there, listening. The hiss rose. Not breath. Pressure moving through a throat that wasn't a throat. It cut to a higher pitch, then fell. Earl showed up then with his grown boy, Nate. They came in fast to the fence at our right. Lanterns swinging, voices up. Anybody there? They weren't quiet. Civilians never are when a thing turns sideways. The lanterns threw shaky light over fog and brush. The figure turned those beams to the lanterns. The red dulled. The columns narrowed, then widened. I thought it was protecting something in its head. The fog near the oak thickened. The ground darkened around the base of the tree, not a burn mark you make with fire. A spread in rings. They were not in the grass 10 minutes before. I would have seen them. Down by the truck, Whitaker cut in on Kincaid's belt. Getting a tone, he said. He sounded almost pleased, which tells you how odd this was. Repeating tone, counts and prime gaps. 2 seconds, 3, 5, 7, 11, then repeats. He had his pencil and he was marking ticks on the lid of an ammo can. It's deliberate, he said. It's clean. He said it soft, like a man in church who just heard his own name in a way he never has. I felt my stomach clench, not fear, something else. A body knowing it is being measured. It felt wrong to point rifles at it. Still, that is what our hands knew to do. Hargrove stood where he was and raised both hands out, palms open, small, slow movements. Friendly, he called. We mean no harm. Kincaid took the field lamp and flashed short, long, steady patterns. She kept it simple. She shifted to a harmless strobe, low power, well-spaced. Nothing that would scream at an animal. Simple things that say we see you and we're not moving in. The red pillars rested at our boots. I could feel heat on my shins without a burn. The grass blackened at the edges where the beam hung too long. No flame. Just dead plant. The hiss dropped in pitch a little. The thing froze. The fog broke around the lower rim of it in ripples. Something under it made the grass bow. No dust kicked up. No wind. Just weight that wasn't weight. Hummel sucked in air through his teeth and stepped forward. He didn't handle the pressure well. The space in front of your chest when a thing is not natural. He raised his rifle. He didn't draw a bead on the head. He held it at gut height and didn't even know. The figure tilted. You could see a seam along the lower half. A panel shifted a hair. A plate. My brain kept trying to make it flesh and couldn't. It had edges that flesh does not carry. The Jeep headlights flared bright, then died. The filaments glowed dull red, then cooled. The radio screamed feedback at us, a squeal at a pitch that made my eyes water. Hargrove snapped. Weapons low. He didn't yell. The word still hit. Richie broke. He howled once, a deep, chesty thing. He ran down the slope with his tail tucked and did not look back. He never came back. I still think about that. Dogs don't lie. They don't make myth. They just feel the world and choose living. Then, that second voice on the radio. Not ours. Not theirs. A woman's voice. English. Cadence dead wrong. Words we'd used half an hour before. Stand clear. It used Kincaid's phrasing but bent. It carried that odd swing like it was learning our rhythm and stepping off on the wrong foot. The hair on my neck rose. Whitaker swore under his breath. He tapped the mic and whispered, "We're hearing ourselves." The thing drifted downward. It didn't step. It moved clean. No contact with the ground. It avoided the fence wire by inches. It kept open ground and empty space. It didn't bump anything. It mapped the edges of the world and stayed just off them. Nate Bailey's lantern swung wild when he tripped on a rut. The flame flared and flashed right on the glass. The figure's red flared at the same instant. Not an attack. A shield. It snapped a color at any heat or light spark. Hummel fired. Reflex, not a direct hit. Dirt kicked up short. The report slapped the pasture and bounced off the trees. Kincaid's voice cut flat and hard from the diaphragm. Ceasefire. She would have smashed his face if we were in a barracks. Out here, she needed him standing. A pressure rolled out. Not blast, no heat. No concussion that threw dirt, just a slap across skin and leaves. Lanterns died out there. Insects fell from the air and hit grass in a patter. The fog bunched around the oak like it breathed in, then held. The thing pulled back to the white oak. It didn't run, it didn't rush. It retreated on a line so clean you'd swear a rail hung a foot above the grass and it slid on it. I swallowed hard enough to crack a tooth. I wanted to run. My boots didn't know how. The air went quiet the way a church goes quiet when the doors close. Total radio blackout. No hiss, no carrier. Whitaker keyed and got nothing. The Jeep stayed dead. I checked the battery cable with my palm. Warm. No obvious reason. The compass needle spun a lazy circle, paused on wrong, then went sleep dead. My watch froze. The second hand stuck on the 9. It held there for a long breath. Then it ticked. Hargrove looked at his watch. Later we compared. They both froze at the same point. 9:07. I wrote that down in my head and never forgot it. My gut turned. A wet wave, like seasick. I swallowed bile and it floated under my tongue, copper and acid. My eyes burned and watered. Ortiz said the edges of his sight went dark and pushed in. He kept his voice level. Kincaid pressed the heel of her hand between her eyes and said it felt like a sinus had burst without blood. We looked at each other and didn't talk about panic. Panic gets men killed. We talked about symptoms. We treated it in our heads the way we would treat a gas leak or a bad river crossing. Name it, manage it. The pear-shaped mass by the brush pulsed. Not a flame, not a short, a deep pulse. A build and release you could watch on the rims of 2 oval panels. Something inside whined, high, then higher, then down. Capacitors, maybe. I didn't have words then. I barely have them now. It wasn't fuel, I knew. It wasn't a pump. It sat there and grew its own rhythm. The burned arcs on the ground, the ones we saw fade earlier, brightened fresh, as if drawn by a hot wire under the grass. A new ring outside the last ring. You could see the dew die at the edges. Again, no flame. Just killed life. The thing learned us. That's the only way to say it. It stopped the slow approach. It flanked. It slid tree to tree and showed only a quarter of itself at any time. The red beams didn't sweep wide now. They strobed in a cut pattern that sketched fence posts and boot heels and the bulge of a tire. Efficient. It used only what it needed. Hummel started to talk faster, words mindless. Pieces of old nights in Korea spilled into his sentences. Searchlights, flares, clanking tanks. He kept saying it had to be human. He kept choosing a side out loud. Ours or theirs. He would take either over nothing he could name. I saw his shoulder twitch the way a man's does an hour before he cries. A man like him never cries. He breaks, or he fights, or he finds a wall and he leans hard. Voices carried up from the road. A woman cried out for her boy. She had walked up with a neighbor when the red light drew half the town. People gather at trouble the way ants find sugar. It's the first rule of disaster. Civilians drift in until the air goes sour with fear. They don't know perimeters, and they don't hear quiet orders. They just pull closer, thinking you will handle it because you wear green and hold a weapon. Hargrove took all that in. He waited. The thing. The civilians. The radio dead. The odds stink. The dark. He rubbed his palm once along the side of his face and left a wet streak of sweat and grass on his cheek. Then he chose. Kincaid moved before he breathed the word. She said what we were all thinking. Draw the thing away with sound while we pull Earl's family and the neighbors down the road. She had the map of the pasture in her head. She knew where the truck sat. She knew where the trees gave cover. She didn't wait for a nod. She waited for the exact words because she was squared away, and that kept us alive. Hargrove made it official. Sound lure on the truck. Keep it irregular. We move civilians out slow. No lights. If it approaches, we hold. No fire. He turned to me and put a hand on my shoulder. You handle anyone hurt. He didn't add, if we go down. He didn't need to. Whitaker ran a line to the truck horn and stripped wire with his teeth. He set a rheostat he had no right to have in his pocket. He could make a signal from a dead car battery and chewing gum if you gave him a minute. Ortiz trotted low along the back of the fence and slid into the shadows near a split rail. He moved best of all of us. I saw him vanish in a stand of sumac, then his cap shift as he looked out. The horn blared. Not steady. It came in stutters and odd runs. Long. Short. Two shorts. Long. Long. A gap that made sense, then a gap that didn't. A language of wrong timing. The thing turned towards it. The red beams cut a line to the truck, then blinked and narrowed. It didn't rush. It processed. It chose. It began to glide that way in a curve that made use of every bit of cover. It ignored posts. It hugged empty space. It was smart. It had rules. It ran those rules until they fit this place. Ortiz cut back to the fence. He had minutes of life in his face then. He moved crisp but soft the way you do when going past a nest of yellow jackets. He slipped behind the Jeep. The thing passed near him. Too near. You could feel it when it came. Your hairs stood on your arms. It pulled at your skin. Not wind. A static tug. His dog tags lifted and quivered. I heard a small metal ping from contact I could not see. He froze, didn't breathe. The thing paused. It held right in front of him. The red beams tilted towards his chest for 2 blinks. They settled slightly, scanning the stamping on the tags, reading metal, reading the dip of his ribcage. Then it continued. It did not touch him. It knew the fence wire was there and eased over the lowest string by less than a hand's width. Whitaker whispered into nothing. No radio, just words to keep himself sane. It's ranking threats. It's mapping. It's running a loop. He noted when the horn held it. It didn't anger it. It didn't ease it. It just made it hold and puzzle. That was enough. The pair masked by the brush pulsed to match the horn for 3 cycles. On, off, on, off. Then a shift. Then it found a new match. It was learning our timing. The way a man learns how another man holds his fork and then copies him without thinking. Cricket stayed silent. They would not come back for hours. We split. We had to. Hargrove placed us with short orders. Kincaid and I took Earl and Nate and 2 families. One woman with a boy who'd slipped his mother's hand. One older man who walked with a cane that stuck in the wet ground. We moved them down the slope in a wedge that hid them behind us. No flashlights. We laced our fingers in their sleeves and guided them by touch. Kincaid's hand on my back when I wavered. Her voice steady and low. Keep it slow. Don't run. Running trips ankles. Whitaker and Hummel held the sound. Ortiz spotted from near the fence line where he could climb a tree if he had to. Hargrove stayed center. He could see all of us if he took 2 steps left and 1 step right. He kept the field phone box under his arm. Deadline or not, he did not put it down. You hold to your tools when the world jumps. We eased the civilians along. The woman whispered her boy's name every 3rd step. I had wanted to tell her to hush, but I remembered my Irish mother and I shut my mouth. A mother calls. That is the rule. You can't break it out of her. You can only stand bigger and hope it doesn't draw heat. Hargrove chose a hillock where the sound carried clean. He wired the field phone amplifier to a small throat mic he'd used in a different war. He spoke into it soft. He used short words. He said, "We will not approach. We have civilians. We do not seek conflict." He repeated it twice and then waited. It would have sounded foolish any other day. That night it sounded like the only sane thing left to try. The figure turned. The hiss dropped to a quiet cycle that sat under the crickets that weren't there. The beams widened, then narrowed. It did that 3 times. The same way. A pattern. A return. A reply to his pattern. I let myself breathe. Only a little. Hummel watched the pair platform. He watched it lift a hand's height off the brush. He didn't see the civilians. He didn't hear the exchange of patterns. He saw an enemy device signal for a bigger hammer. His face hardened in a way I had seen men use when they are about to throw their lives away because that will feel clear when nothing else does. He ran forward and brought up his rifle. He didn't scream. He didn't curse. He just moved with that stripped-down focus. He believed he was saving us. He would have shot the panel seam. He would have wasted it. He wouldn't have dented it. He would have gotten a dozen civilians killed and put a gouge in the town that would never heal. Hargrove stepped between. He did not think. He didn't have time to. He put his body where the barrel pointed. He grabbed the wood of the stock and shoved it down with one hand. His other hand was empty. The empty hand is how I remember him. Open palm. Calling a halt with skin and bones and a judgment that said he would rather carry a hole in his body than pull this trigger at the wrong moment. The figure flared red, full red. No white, no heat. A wall that said stop. The pressure hit us. My knee buckled. Hargrove dropped to one knee. He didn't go flat. That mattered. He kept his head up and eyes on. He was not knocked out. He would remember. I grabbed his webbing and dragged without asking. You never ask for permission to save a man. You just do it and argue later. He grunted and then found his feet. Hummel stood 5 feet away and trembled like he'd found himself naked on a roof. You know that naked feeling. Your soul lifted out of your chest and held under a light for inspection. Whitaker did a thing then that still bothers me. It bothers me because it worked, and that means it was heard. He keyed the prime interval tones through the little amplifier. He offset them a hair. Not much, just enough to mark them as a reply and not an echo. He laid them down and let them walk the air. 2 seconds. 3, 5, 5, 7, 11. Then again, the machine returned them once. Perfect mirror with the same small delays. Then it stopped. Not disinterest. A choice to halt. The platform pulse matched our radio static. The horn sat between. For 12 seconds, it all held in step. I counted inside my skull. Not 1 and 2. I ticked out each heartbeat like it was my last. Then silence. Clean. No hiss, no hum, no horn, nothing. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like the earth fell away and left you with sky and a thin thread to hold. The figure rose. Slow, not rush. Slow the way a crane lifts a load and checks every sway. It cleared the white oak without touching a leaf. The platform lifted too, with no flame, no smoke. The grass flattened under it without wind. The red faded down through shades to a dull coal color, then softer, then gone. Not fast, not cloaked. Just vanished past the edge of what my eyes can track. It didn't shoot across the sky. It didn't make a sound. It left. It left, and the pressure that held my ribs let go. The Jeep coughed. It turned over once. The lights blinked. The radio came back with that metal hiss you don't notice in normal life. The crickets started up in stutters that fell apart, then found a groove. The woman with the boy sobbed once and then got quiet in a hard way that means a person will not sleep for a week. We held the ground for a long minute with nothing to hold against. We did what soldiers do. We cleaned up. We logged. We took care of people. We called nothing what it wasn't. Hargrove filed the report before first light. He wrote it clear and dry. Unidentified device. Potential hazard to health. Equipment failure observed. Pressure effect observed. Temporary communication disruption. Civilian presence. No casualties. He left out our guesses. He didn't use words that make men write back with jokes. He included weather, humidity, Thunder lines to the west. Low cloud. He drew the pasture and marked the white oak in the brush. He noted concentric ground marks and the time watches hung. He didn't say 9:07. He wrote 9 minutes past 9. He always spelled things out. The paper took the ink like it wanted to hold that night and never let it escape. Kincaid scooped soil in baggies and wrote on them with grease pencil. She cut a square of sod where the ring had gone bright. She scraped a slick from a leaf where a thin film clung, metallic and faintly oily. She bagged it. She marked the nearest fence post with a notch so we could find the exact spot later by sightline. She had no grid to use, so she used 3 points you can't move: oak, rock, and fence corner. That holds up better than any gadget. I flushed my eyes with what clean water we had. I counted pulses in my ears. I took pulses on my wrist, and Ortiz's and Hummel's. We were all high, then dropped. No burns. No blisters, no numb patches. Just sting and metallic taste and a slow ache in the temples. By dawn, the taste went to the back of the tongue and sat there the way old pennies sit when you suck on them as a kid. We said nothing about fear. We said exposed and symptoms and resolve. Hummel went quiet. He put his rifle down like a man sets a tool at the end of a day when he knows the job isn't finished, but also knows he can't do another minute without wrecking something. He sat on the tailgate of the truck and cleaned the bolt with careful hands. His hands did not shake anymore. His eyes had a new place in them. He didn't get a write-up. He should have. He didn't. Hargrove wrote that the shot struck Earth as a warning and did not endanger civilians due to control on his part. That was not strictly true. It was the truth we chose, so we could all go on. A memo came weeks later. It was short. It tossed terms that made the mind drift, categorized. Further analysis off base. It didn't tell us who took the samples. It said we were to keep the incident to minimal dissemination. Quiet, in other words. If a paper called, we were to say we did a relay test and had normal equipment trouble due to weather. We were to wish them a nice day and refer them to someone who would never answer the phone. In town, the talk grew teeth. Folks said there was a monster up past Fisher Farm. They said it had eyes that burned holes through boys. One paper ran a drawing of a thing with a face you could sell on the street, a tall body with a hood and claws. It wasn't wrong, it wasn't right. It was a carnival version of a church painting. Folks brought it coffee money and it smiled back from the print. None of us did interviews. When we were asked at the diner, we shrugged. We said we saw lights and smelled something sour and pulled the truck out of a rut. We told the truth and left out the parts that would break a person's sleep. No one wrote down the fact that the Jeep turned its own lights back on without human hands. No one wrote down that the insects fell out of the air for a minute like seed shaken from a sack with no hand on the sack. At night for a while, Whitaker replayed the tone logs. He lifted those primes off his paper and turned them over and over. He worked the delays in the margins. He did math I never learned. He did it without smiling. He didn't do it to prove a point. He did it because a thing had spoken, and that means you speak back even if you don't know the language. He drifted to sleep at the crate one night while the set whispered, and I covered him with my jacket because that is what we do. The 12-second sync haunted Hargrove. He never told me that straight. I saw it in how he touched his watch whenever the room went quiet. He wrote a note the week after. He folded it into his notebook. He let me read it a year later when we were both posted somewhere flat and dull. The note said, not hostile, not ours, not ours, not theirs, a surveyor. He underlined that last word once, not twice, once. Then he closed the book and asked me about my sister's new baby, and we went on. Months later, Ortiz went back at dusk, alone. He walked the field and stood by the white oak. He held still and listened. He told me the birds did a strange thing when the sun tilted. They paused for one beat longer than a normal switch from day to night, one extra beat. Then they sang in the regular way. He said he went home after and ate stew and felt the world fit again. He didn't press it. Pressing breaks a thing that won't give. There is no reveal. There is no flag on a pole at the end. There is no paper that tells us the make and model. There is this. 6 soldiers on a hill did their job. We watched. We didn't fire into it when firing would have been a sin. We pulled families down the slope. We logged and we cleaned and we lived. So that's the end of our video. If you made it this far, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel and it's free. And if you want more terrifying encounters like this one, check out the other videos on screen right now. Thanks for watching and stay safe out there. See you soon.